Alright, well, hopefully, guys, we are now live. Just checking a few settings. Alright, guys, so, oh my goodness, like, what? I mean, I had no idea what was going to happen in that episode, apart from him being called Aegon, but there's just too much to talk about. There's too much to talk about. I mean, mixed feelings about the end bit, mixed feelings about the end bit with the dragon, but I just think that there's so many theories already swimming in my mind about what is going to happen between, from now until season 8. You can kind of see why there's only 6 episodes left, because I mean, they're past the wall now. Do you know what I mean? That's it. They're past the wall. So there's not really much time left between the army of the dead marching south to where Winterfell is. I mean, what you're talking, like that's a week for them to march there, if that. Anyway, guys, so look, it's a live Q&A, the first one I've ever done, so you might have to be a little bit patient with me. Fire your questions away. Make sure you tag me in them, and then hopefully I can get in there and start answering some questions. So the first one I'm going to read out here. So we've got Rob with the first question. Do you think Beric and Tormund survived the attack on Eastwatch? I'm going to say yeah for now, only because for me, if they would have died, that's you've got to look at kind of what kind of content they can give on screen, on camera, and let's be honest, if Tormund dies, we know we're all right. Do you know what I mean? Tormund is one of the best guys right now, and Beric, he's alive more than just to die on the wall. So for me, they're definitely still alive. Will they make it out alive? That is going to be pretty scary. Because they've got the army of the dead, at least 100,000 giants. You've got the Night King on his white or White Walker dragon, and yeah, no, for sure they're alive. Will they make it out alive? They could be some of the first people to go in season 8. So obviously there's a lot to talk about there, whether they're going to make it back. Um, Next question from It's Me Mario. So we've got, what do you think of John's real name? Well, look, guys, this is a really big thing. This ties in back to the House of the Undying, both book version and show version. So for a long time, people have thought it might have been like Jaehaerys, something to a play on the J, but this goes back to the House of the Undying vision in the book that Dany had, where she saw a vision of Rhaegar and an unnamed and an undescribed woman. And of course, we all know that Rhaegar says that his name is Aegon. What name fit for a king, and that his is a song of ice and fire. Now, the reason why we have never had that vision in the TV show is because if we saw who that woman was, we would know if it was a northern woman or whether it's a Dornish woman, and it is vital for the story, because if Prince Rhaegar has somehow figured out that John, or as we know is Aegon, is the prince that was promised, they could have revealed that was back in season 2, which would have kind of messed up a lot of the story from season 2 until now. So only getting that final definitive payoff now means that it's literally the end of the show, isn't it? It's right at the end of the show. But there's more to come on that. I've got a huge theory coming your way that's going to link everything together, and I also think it's kind of confirmation that it's whether we call him John or whether we call him Aegon from now on. I'm gonna keep calling him John, but it's pretty much confirmation that John is the prince that was promised. But like I said, I've got a theory coming out this week, or I should say, yeah, this week I'll have it coming out. All right, next question from Lewis Jordan. All right, where has Jaime gone? Okay, again, it's another big question, and everyone's already talking about, does this mean that Jaime is more likely to kill Cersei, or is he actually, further away from killing Cersei? Personally, for me, I think Jaime's going north. He said it at the end, he wants to stay true to his word, which means he wants to fight for the north. And when he says he wants to fight for the living, it's not like the way Cersei wants to fight for the living. She just wants to stay alive. Whereas I think Jaime actually wants to fight for the living. He wants to fight, the Night King and the undead. So I think that's him riding north. The screenshot that we got of him as he was riding away was actually when him and Bronn came back from one of their battles. So we know that's from the northern side of the territory. I mean, obviously, there's not really much further south you can go. So he's definitely gone into the northern direction. So it wouldn't surprise me that if at some point in season 8 that he does turn up at Winterfell. So, it would be good to pick up with him in particular. There's a lot of plot lines that have actually opened as a result of that. Alright, so let's take up the next question. It's funny, a few of you guys are already saying here, Jaime has increased in terms of being the one that could kill Cersei. I think he's gone. I think he's done. I've been saying this now, the build up throughout season 7, that I think Jaime's getting closer and closer to that point of being just done with Cersei. You've got to remember that if she's telling the truth about the pregnancy, he's walking out on that too. He's not just walking out on Cersei. That's how much he is done with the capital. Okay, so next question from Makafor. Will Arya and Sansa turn against Jon when they find out that he isn't Stark blood? Not at all. I mean, it's a great question. That not at all. I think the closing line that we got from Winterfell, the one that we heard in the trailer, is that the lone wolf dies, the pack survives. And in the words of Jon, and this is a very important, the words of Jon to the Greyjoy. He was talking to him that he's not just a Greyjoy, he's not just Theon Greyjoy, he is also a Stark. He was raised by Ned Stark. You can't get any more northern than that. And even though Jon's name might be a Targaryen, he's a legitimate heir to the throne now, he still has Ned Stark inside of him. How many times have we heard Jon kind of, saying the same things that Ned said, watch yourself or ring your head like a bell, little things like that. The man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. These are characteristics of Ned, and even though he's a Targaryen, if you look at Chris from Smokescreen, he did some awesome live streams about a dragon raised by wolves. And that's the exact definition of Jon. He is a dragon, but he is a dragon raised by wolves. So that's very important to note that. Alright, next question. What do you think... So this is from Steve Viver. What do you think of Tyrion? Is there suspicion? Is he being a snake? I've been up and down with Tyrion this whole season. I mean, on one side, you can see the divide. You can see the divide there between him and Dany. Some of his choices have not been spot on. And... he's cost them. He's cost them a lot of soldiers, a lot of kind of political and military position over Westeros. But I think deep down he's actually doing what Varys says he wants to, which is trying to create a better world. But at the same time, the conflict with his family is way just kind of getting in between him and Daenerys. But now that Jaime has left Cersei, I think we're going to see things change drastically on that front. I think that, if Jaime does meet up in the north, him and Tyrion are going to have a great reunion, not just kind of this awkward, well, I'm with Cersei, I'm with Daenerys. It's going to be like the brothers having a proper reunion again. So from there, I think that I think that Tyrion has a bit of a strength with Jaime coming back in the fold. There's obviously still things with Cersei, and obviously, even though Tyrion might not like to admit it, and even Cersei might not like to admit it, they still have this underlying, we are Lannisters, looking out for one another. Cersei couldn't get the Mountain or bring herself to have the Mountain kill Tyrion, and that was probably the best opportunity she will ever have. She could have just been done with it there and then. So there's always going to be that kind of playing a factor in, and the same then with Tyrion with Daenerys, and Cersei. How many times has he stopped Daenerys just riding up to the Red Keep and just scorching the hell out of it, stopping Daenerys from standing the full force of the Dothraki and the Unsullied and just unleashing war upon the capital? A big part of that, he keeps saying that it's to preserve the greater good and to preserve, to make a better world, to break the wheel. But a part of it is because he doesn't want to see his sister go that way. And I think if at all, he doesn't want to see his sister die. He does definitely still care for her there. Alright, let's check out some of the next questions. I'm sorry if I do skip over any of them, I really am. So the next one from Danessa Dancor. Why was Tyrion mad, and why did Cersei let Jaime leave? Okay, so there's a good line actually that's spoken between Tyrion and with Daenerys in the throne room, I think it was in episode 6, or episode 5 maybe, and they're talking about Jon Snow and about Jon Snow potentially being in love with with Cersei, sorry, with Daenerys, and he says the line of, how many men come across Daenerys and fall in love with her. And I think a part of him is talking about himself there a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he's romantically involved with Daenerys, but just like Jorah, just like with Drogo, just like with everyone that comes across Daenerys, he obviously has some kind of feelings like that towards her, and he likes Jon Snow, but he's basically just seen another man, just like with Jorah, the same kind of jealousy thing. He's just seen another man in Jon kind of come in, and he knows what's going on. He knows the two of them are obviously, having intimate relations in their little cabin. So I think that's potentially part of the reason why Tyrion might be angry. But as for why did Cersei let Jaime leave, what option did she have? I mean, he called her bluff. He called her bluff hard on it. She said, no one walks away from me. And faced with the mountain, which, by the way, the mountain is kind of starting to seem less and less scary because everyone's kind of just standing up to him a bit. The mountain there pulled his sword out. I actually, for a split second, I thought that Jaime was gonna get killed. I honestly thought, is this gonna really happen? But then he said, I don't believe you, because she is, excuse my language here, but she is full of shit. She really is. And so he just walks away. If she wanted to stop him, or if she could have brought herself, or bring herself to stop him, I think she would have, but she couldn't, because just like I've been saying with Tyrion, she is all about the Lannisters, and she isn't about to strike down the one Lannister that she respects left. Although I don't know if she really does respect him. But yeah, so let's look for the next question. There's quite a lot coming in, so I'm sorry guys if I do miss any. There's obviously a lot of questions coming in here. So let's have a look at it now. Alright, so we've got another one here. Maybe the marriage will stop when Jon Snow and Dany learn that they're relatives. Okay, so that's a pretty good question that we've got there. So obviously right now, probably the best ending to one of the episodes, in my opinion, it was obviously with Bran seeing the vision of Lyanna and Rhaegar, being married. Just the payoff on that was unbelievable, which obviously, so now we know that officially, there's no more disputing it, there's no more, Ashara Dane theories, things like that. Jon and Daenerys are aunt and nephew. Now, I don't know how that's going to play with them when they do find that out, because obviously, where they're concerned, they weren't raised, in the whole incestuous side of things. Jon was raised in the north, so when he finds out that Daenerys is his aunt, I don't know how he's going to feel about that, because it's not as if he's going to be like, oh, well, I'm a Targaryen, it's okay. And same with Daenerys. I mean, she always grew up to believe that she was going to marry her brother, but then she broke that cycle, right? She watched her brother die because she didn't believe in those same kind of old school Targaryen philosophies. She stood up for something else, something different. Like she said, she's been raped by a man that she later on went to fall in love with and called her husband. The ideologies that these people have might not necessarily welcome that relationship, but at the same time, they haven't been brought up knowing that they're relatives. And I think it's very hard to kind of just knock down those, the feelings, those barriers, just because you find out of that particular relationship. That will be one of the most interesting things to find out. Maybe it can cause a bit of distance between them at first, but I think they'll pull through. I think they'll definitely pull through. Alright, let's check out the next question now. So, just 1 second, guys. Let's scroll down. So, alright, so we've got one here from Navin Lalwani. If the Night King did not get the dragon, what was the alternate way to cross the wall? Seems like that was just luck through that he acquired the dragon. Alright, so guys, look, this is a fantastic question, and this is one of my biggest struggles that I've had actually when coming to this part of the episode and the episode before. So let's put it this way: if the only way that the Night King could get past the wall was with the dragon, and obviously that was handed to him by Daenerys and Jon, kind of together. If they didn't go north of the wall, are we technically saying that the Night King could never have got past the wall? Okay, so we have to assume that at this point. Because if he had any other method, let's say the Horn of Joramun, which is obviously as it stands book based, if it was because of the mark on Bran, or if it was because he froze the sea. If he had any of those methods that would have worked before, then why didn't he do it beforehand? Why has he had to wait until now to kind of make his move on the wall? And I think that the answer to this question is, my breakdown that I only just put out yesterday was that because he did need the dragon, but more importantly, I think he baited that move. I think he baited that move north of the wall. Obviously there is something more going on with the Night King than we know, and I think we don't know the extent of his green seer abilities if he has them. We don't know the extent of his warg abilities if he has those. But he's not just a normal man that became the Night King. I don't think that the Children of the Forest gave him these additional powers. I think that whatever his powers were kind of molded per se, molded by what happened to him by being created as the Night King. And so what we're seeing now is that he actually has the ability, maybe kind of not. I don't know about whether it's seen in the future, but he definitely knows. He knows things. He knows something that's kind of out of the norm. Do you know what I mean? Like he seems to know where Bran was going to be in his vision when he marked him initially. He seems to know who the Three-Eyed Raven was. Let's put it this way: if the Three-Eyed Raven was no one to the Night King, then the Whites and the other White Walkers wouldn't have left him for the Night King. When he came in and he paused before striking down the Three-Eyed Raven, that was a personal kill. When Bran was flying over with the crows, again, this was him kind of sensing something more. He sensed Bran in those crows. Now, whether that's because of a personal connection between those two particular characters, or whether there's something more going on, at the end of the day, you can either look at this one of two ways. The Night King getting that dragon was either one, pure luck, which I kind of refuse to believe. I refuse to believe that, even though Dan and Dave are starting to butcher this a little bit, I refuse to believe that that isn't one of the core aspects of George's story. I personally choose to believe that he baited that whole mission north of the wall. That little party of White Walkers, and the one White Walker and the Whites that Jon ambushed, just so happened to be that when he killed the White Walker, only one of the Whites survived. One White, in my mind, to call the other, to call the main army over. That was like their alarm bell. That's when the Night King knew to come. When the guys were asleep, in the middle of the lake, the Night King could have struck any one of them down. He could have ended Jon's life right there at that moment, or Beric's, or anyone's. But he didn't. He waited. And more importantly, something I've said before is he wasn't wielding his traditional curved ice blade. He brought the ice spears, and he brought them with him, in my mind, for a purpose. He knew what was going on. His generals knew what was going on. They kind of just handed him the spears like they knew what was about to go down. A lot of people say, why didn't he go for Drogon? I think the logical answer for that, for me, is that Viserion was burning the thing, burning the ground around them, and he was starting to fly back towards where the Night King was. So he could either go for the easy target, but then potentially be killed by the dragon, or take the dragon out, which is, I think, what he went for. I really hope it wasn't just luck. Let's put it that way. So, all right, let's look for the next one. Next question. All right, so this is from Party Time Ward. Thoughts on the interaction between the Hound and the Mountain. So, all right, let's put it this way. At this point, the Clegane Bowl is still slightly on the table, ever so slightly on the table. The Night King. It was great to see when they first walked in that he kind of knew his brother, and he wasn't afraid of him. He wasn't afraid of what he was. He stepped right up to him toe to toe, and he's like, what have they done to you? What have they done to you? But he knew that something, whether the Hound's seen more than we know at this point, he kind of said to him, this is not how you die. You know that this isn't the end for you. As if he knew something, and whether he knew that he was going to be the one to strike him down, or whether, I know a question a lot of people have asked, is it because the Night King potentially is going to be able to possess the Mountain? He's technically dead. He's as a form of reanimation, form of undead. Is that why Qyburn was so worried and so shocked, when he saw the White? Because is he starting to think, hang on a minute, the Mountain is technically dead. So what's going to happen when the Night King, gets close to him? Is he going to be able to kind of take control of whatever's keeping the Mountain alive? All right, let's go for the next question. All right, so this is from Bartos. What is that ice dragon shooting with? Because it can't be ice. Ice wouldn't be the thing to destroy the wall. You know what? It was a great question. This is a great question, and it's a very, very difficult thing to answer actually because, like you said, if it was ice, would it really have an effect on the wall? Whatever was happening there, it looked more like kind of an explosion thing rather than the wall being melted. Was it the magic of the dragon, kind of interacting with the wall? Is that what was taking it down? Because, like you said, it's a bit strange. He becomes a White Walker dragon or an undead dragon. The color of his, breath changes. I still think it was flame. I don't think it was icy breath. I think that's just the color that it is. It looks kind of good for a visual display. I mean, let's think about the promos for next season. You're going to have dragons on one side breathing the orange fire, and then on the other side you're going to have the Night King's dragon breathing the blue flame. It looks like blue flame to me. The kind of the animation of it doesn't look like a kind of a frost per se, because that's what it would be like. It would be more of a frost. But I think one thing that interested me a lot was how fast the dragon was. It was really, really fast. It seemed like the way it was flying, the way it was acting, the way the strength of it. It was almost as if it was kind of like a constant full pelt. Like it didn't have to stop. It didn't get tired. It didn't have to kind of rest or anything. It just went for it. So I think that's going to be very interesting to see when he does come to fight the other dragons or fight in the wars, because the other two dragons obviously they have a limit. They can't just keep flying. They can't just keep breathing fire. They have to rest. They get tired. Whereas the Night King's dragon won't ever have to do that. So it will be interesting to see what goes on there. All right. So question here from Vanessa. What about the prophecy, and this is about the Voluncar prophecy, now that Cersei is pregnant? Alright, so there's a few ways to look at this. The first one is Cersei pregnant? I think that's a very, very important question to ask, because, I mean, we've kind of seen Qyburn in there. Was it a trick for Jaime? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that she is pregnant, because when Tyrion was in there, she was kind of, when she was holding her tummy, she was acting instinctively. I don't think she meant to show Tyrion that side of her, and obviously Tyrion kind of sorted that out. So, one of two things then. Cersei's pregnant. Either one, we know she's not going to have the baby. For me, the prophecy is set in stone. That is one of the few prophecies that I really do believe in. As things stand, it has come entirely true. All three of her children have died. She only had 3 children. Robert Baratheon had 20 children. So she's either going to miscarry. That's a very easy answer. Or the one that I like a bit more is that it's actually placed a 9-month time bomb on her life. At this point, we know that she can't give birth to that child. So whether we know that she's going to die before she gives birth because of the prophecy, and the prophecy is going to be fulfilled, or whether it's because she miscarries. I think she's going to miscarry. I think the show's done a lot of brutal things, like with the Red Wedding, getting stabbed in the belly, for Robb Stark's wife. But I think we're going to kind of see Cersei break down a bit. At the moment she seems untouchable. Her character seems untouchable. She just, she doesn't care about anyone. She doesn't care about anything. So I think if we were to ever see her miscarry with a child, it would potentially kind of break her down a little bit. I feel like it could be potentially the one small thing that she's hoping, that she's kind of hanging on for. This idea of that she has a dynasty or a future ahead of her that's beyond her own life. Whether but she won't get there. She will not get there. The Voluncar prophecy will be fulfilled. And on that note, I also think it was very, very interesting to see the Euron Greyjoy. That was a bit of a bluff kind of move, on their play. At first when he walked out, I was genuinely sat there kind of thinking, holy crap, has he really just walked away from this? Whereas and then when she came back and she said, no, he's gone to Essos to get the Golden Company. I thought it was a very, very good play. What the real question actually is in my mind is what's going on with the Iron Bank, right? So she said that to Jaime in the end that we have the support of the Iron Bank, but we haven't seen that. I don't understand why they had these scenes with Taicho. He's the guy from the Iron Bank. He came in. He had this awesome dialogue between him and Cersei about who's going to come in and you know he kind of made the threat that you have our support as long as you have the gold. The Tyrell gold comes back, but then we don't see the exchange of kind of all right. So here's the gold. What support are you going to give us? He just kind of disappeared, and I'm left in this kind of state where I'm thinking, so have the gold has the gold been given back to the Iron Bank, or is Cersei kind of just assuming that she's got their help? Because looking at the timing of all this, that's what I'm gonna have to go for. I'm gonna have to go for the fact that she's assuming that because she did get the gold back, that the Iron Bank's now in favor of them, and she's going off to spend that gold. Because you put your mind in this in the place of a banker. Why, after someone has just lost everything that they've lost, would you then just immediately lend them the money to get another army back? Because once that army is gone, everything's gone. Everything has gone from King's Landing. Even if, in fact, if they win, at what point does the Iron Bank think they're getting that gold back ever if they put it back into Cersei? Because there's not really any more gold left in Westeros. Do you know what I mean? And especially with the Night King and the others coming, surely Bravos and the people of Essos have got some idea of what's going on. There's constant ships back and forth. Eastwatch is right on that side of the continent. They've got to have some idea that things aren't looking so good in Westeros. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. So a great one here from Sam the Target. What do you think of the scene with Littlefinger in the hall? Honestly, it was one of the most satisfying scenes I have ever had the pleasure of watching. Seriously. Watching him squirm the way he did, he kind of had this little go-to of, if I can just speak to you alone, to kind of try and, obviously fool her some more. But I actually just talked about this, maybe, again in the video that I just put out, where I said that a lot of people have had this massive divide. You've got Team Sansa, Team Arya, are the girls playing the Stark sisters against one another? Are the Stark sisters plotting with one another against Littlefinger? And I said I think it was a little bit of all three. And in the end, I think that's exactly how it went down. I mean, like I said, when Arya first read that letter, I think she had every right to be angry. You got to remember the last time they saw each other properly, they hated each other. Lady was just killed because of what happened with with Joffrey. Nymeria was fought. She had to kind of make Nymeria to run away, which was another side of things. And they really didn't like each other. So then to read that must have brought up all of those feelings back to the surface. But like I said, I don't think that was the be all end all of things. Arya wanted to vent a little bit about reading, the letter, but she had multiple opportunities to kill Sansa. So that for me was always off the table, always off the table. And then with with Sansa, potentially killing Arya, a lot of people seem to think that the reason why she sent Brienne away was so she could make that move. But then again, like I said, that doesn't make sense because Arya went toe to toe with Brienne, and who else was going to really step up to Arya if Sansa wanted to do something about Arya? Don't get me wrong, for a split second, when Arya was brought into the hall, I was a bit like, oh, what the hell's going to go down here? Because I didn't read any of the spoilers or the leaks for this episode. I've had to stay off YouTube actually just to avoid everything because of the amount of people posting comments and spoilers. And so for a split second, I was a little bit like what's going to go on here? Like, is Arya gonna have to fight off a few people, or I was a little bit worried. But then I kind of started to get the gist of things. The way Pete was smug in the corner, and then I think Sansa made one or two glances over at him, and then there's the moment kind of Arya was like, all right, fine, let's do this, get on with it. And she was like, and it was the line that Sansa delivered when she said, you are accused of murder and conspiring. I was a bit like, oh, like hang on a minute, because she can't really be accusing Arya of murder. Maybe the conspiracy side of things, but not the murder. So to the second it kind of, moved on to Baelish, oh, it was awesome to kind of see just the way he squirmed. For me, maybe 4 or 5 episodes a bit too late. This should have been happening. Like I said, episode 3, episode 4. I think they spent a lot of time on the whole Baelish and putting Baelish in that corner, and kind of just proving towards that ultimately playing the game is potentially going to get you killed. Um, I wasn't expecting the swiftness of it though. Like, he was on his knees begging. He was almost crying actually. I think at one point, and the way Aya just kind of walked up to him and just sliced his throat. But it was great to see that this had obviously all been squared off with was I think is it Johan Royce? The one of the I think he's one of the captains of the Knight's Vale, and he was already on board. When she dropped the bomb about how Baelish had pushed Lysa through the moon door, there was kind of like no reaction anywhere. And the best moment though of that entire scene was when he tried to kind of be like, oh well, none of you saw it, in terms of the Ned Stark, when he set Ned Stark up, and it was kind of like, oh well, none of you have seen it, none of you have got the proof, and Bran just pipes up and he's like, you put a knife to his throat, you told him, I told you not to trust me. It was amazing, just to kind of the way he was called out on that. All right, guys, we got a super chat through from Althani, so thank you very much for £10. So, Game of Theories. Will we see Daenerys get pregnant? And do you think Valyrian steel can be made? And do you think that the dragon glass is a part of the Valyrian steel? Okay, so let's go to the first part. Do you think Daenerys can get pregnant? They definitely threw a massive little Easter egg at this when Jon and Daenerys are talking in the dragon pit. And Daenerys is talking about how the dragons are her children, obviously making reference to the fact that she just lost one, and she drops the bomb of I can't have any more children, and Jon just kind of calls it out quite plainly and quite obviously. So who told you this? Oh, the witch, the crazy witch from Essos told me that I can't have any more children. And he just calls it out straight away. He's like, well, you ever think that that's not reliable information? Bang on the money, Jon. Is that reliable information? A crazy witch who, wanted to hurt Daenerys when she was potentially at her most vulnerable, and she did hurt Daenerys. She lost her loved one. She loved Drogo. She loved their son, and she lost her son. Sorry, and I think that by telling her, you can't have any more children, it's just trying to hurt her even more. And she's believed that from season 1. She's believed from season 1 that she can't have any more children. So I think giving us that little boat sex scene, hashtag boat sex, everyone. I know you've all been spamming it in the chat, but that was kind of confirmation. That scene's happening just to kind of prove to us that she can have children. They're gonna have children, and this goes back, by the way, to the prophecy in the House of the Undying. When Daenerys saw the vision, and we know it's Rhaegar with an unnamed woman. The woman is Lyanna, and Aegon is Jon. So when he's talking about, and he is the prince that was promised, he is the Song of Ice and Fire. Jon is the Song of Ice and Fire, Lyanna and Rhaegar. And when he says, but the dragon needs a third head, he's talking about Jon, Daenerys, and their child. That is the 3 heads of the dragon. There is no doubt about that. The next part of the question was, and do you think Valyrian steel can be made? I did a video on this. Last year, and for me, it was about how I thought dragon glass was potentially an element that made Valyrian steel. Because I thought that dragon fire alone, I don't see how that would have affected the physical property that kind of the smoky description, the ripple that it's described as having, and obviously then the fact that it doubles up as the weakness to the White Walkers and to the Whites. And I always ask the question of, was that the ingredient? Was dragon glass the ingredient in Valyrian steel? But now I'm looking at where we're at in the show, and kind of thinking, we've got 6 episodes left. Let's be honest. When season 8 starts again, um, they're gonna have to immediately address what happened at the wall, with the wall falling, with Tormund, with Beric. Are they alive? And after that, I'm kind of then looking back to Gendry. Do we think Gendry is going to have a little experiment? Maybe he's going to talk to Bran. I mean, look at what happened. When people say that we don't have enough time to cover that theory or to cover that storyline, look what happened in this episode. Maybe 10 minutes to go. Sam walks through the door into Winterfell. He walked into Bran's room in 10 minutes. Not only did we find out the proof that Rhaegar and Lyanna were married, we got the proof that Jon is actually called Aegon. We got the proof that he wasn't a Sand, that he is legitimate the heir to the throne. And we saw a vision. And we saw a vision. Now change that for a scene with Gendry. Gendry walks through the door, talks to Bran. Look, there's got to be something more than dragon glass that can kill the White Walkers. Well, you're a blacksmith, Gendry. Do the math. Put a bit of dragon glass. I get people on the science side of things. Even I've tried working it out on the science side of things. It doesn't stack up, but it's a fantasy world. Try and put some dragon glass and forge it in with some steel. Maybe you can get Valyrian steel. It's a tough one. I feel like it's got to be covered. I feel like I'm going to be a bit disappointed if it comes to the final showdown of the Great War and you've got 50,000 soldiers running around with pieces of dragon glass in their hand. I want to see more than just 100 or 200 Valyrian steel swords. But on that note, I think it's very important for me to do a video on where are all the Valyrian steel swords. If you want me to do that video now, just hashtag Valyrian steel in the chat. And when I watch this back later on, if you want to know where all the swords are, where all the locations are, and a bit more of information about Valyrian steel, just let me know, and I'll happily do a video on that if you want to see that. So hashtag Valyrian steel if you want to see that. All right. So next one. Oh, thank you. Another super chat here, guys, from DK Curse. Thank you very much. $10. Do you think Tyrion betrayed Dany? He's definitely on the list. He's definitely on the list. I mean, right now I've got 3 candidates. All right. So actually, let me start again. So for the people who aren't aware, Daenerys is supposed to be betrayed 3 times. It's another one of the prophecies. I know. The story's full of it, but it's what makes it so amazing. So we know that she was betrayed by Jorah. Okay, sold her out back to Robert Baratheon, back to the crown. But that was only temporary. But he did betray her. There's the first one. The second betrayal was with her best friend. If you remember when she got to Karth, one of her, I can't remember her name. So if you know her name, put it in the chat. But basically, a good friend of hers. So if you remember, she sold out the dragons. They took the dragons away from her, and she had to get the dragons back. The King of Karth. And so we're waiting on that third betrayal. Now we've got 1 season to go, and I know the focus is on the White Walkers, and I know people are probably thinking, well, we've not got time for that. Well, we do have time for that. Do you think, do you think that Varys is going to make it through to the end? I don't know. Are we going to see Dario again? I mean, they've got the Golden Company coming back into the story. Is he going to be a part of that? Or are they going to continue to develop this whole rift between Tyrion and Dany? I'd like to think that the rift is a false play, personally, because I think that they do care about one another. Even though Dany is very quick to kind of rip Tyrion a new arsehole, she cares about him. She really does care about him. We saw it again today when he offered to go, to go to the dragon pit. She was so against it, but she let it happen anyway. Tyrion put his life on the line to kind of make things work out. That they didn't come to King's Landing for nothing. That Viserion didn't die for nothing. So again, I'd like to think that Tyrion is on the loyal side. However, I do think it's either Varys or Dario. So again, hashtag in the chat, guys, right now. Right, 3 candidates: Tyrion, Dario, or Varys. Hashtag, who do you think is going to be the one to betray Daenerys? Or do you think it's going to be someone else? Alright. I know there was a couple more super chats. I've just got one of the mods. He's gonna pull them out for me so we can go over those. So let's go through the next question. All right, here we go. So, great question here from Diane Bermeo. How does Theon Greyjoy get his sister back with one boat? Okay, so I wouldn't necessarily say it's one boat. I mean, I know they had one little rowing boat there, but I don't think that's going to kind of be like the end of the little crew that goes to get Yara back. I said this again. I've been saying this, as the build up to throughout season 7. What the reason why I kind of it's a bit sweet for me. Obviously, I don't want the season to end. But now that the season has ended and we're technically out of the waters where spoilers are concerned, it opens up my doors to theorize again. That's what I love doing, right? And I've been saying for a while that I don't think that Theon's story has ended. I don't think Theon's story has ended whatsoever. That scene between him and Jon is not there for no reason whatsoever. He's getting more screen time, and they've just set up his little one-on-one showdown where he got kneed in the nuts. But obviously, there's nothing there. There's nothing down there, so he's just looking up, smiling. But that was kind of like the moment where he's just won over the rest of the Ironborn, and they're going on a rescue mission. So that's obviously going to be one of the other little side plots. Will it be with one boat? Will they get a bit of backup from Daenerys? I don't know. I'm gonna have to go Bronn style and give me, the whole 10 good men and some spikes, and I'll impregnate the bitch. First things first, we need to know where Yara is. Is she back on the Iron Islands, or is she actually with Euron on his ship? That's the first thing that needs to be established. Once they establish that, if it's on the Iron Islands, then take a small force over there and go and rescue her. If it's on Euron's ship, then they're going to have to kind of sneak on there. That's where it's going to have to be a bit more of a covert mission. And in fact, the one boat is actually going to look like the good deal to work to actually save Yara, because you can't just rock up to Euron's fleet and just try and take it with a massive army. He's gonna whoop your ass. Like, look what happened to Daenerys' fleet back in episode 2. Euron showed up and he rocked that shit hardcore. Alright, so let's go for the next question. Okay, so we've got another one from Steve. Alright, Steve Ivor. What is the Night King's main goal? It's still probably one of the biggest unanswered questions that we've ever seen, that we've ever known. What is the Night King's plan? At this point, he's looking like he's just literally about to take over Westeros. Does he want to just take over Westeros? I don't think he wants to sit on the Iron Throne by any stretch. But there's got to be something more to it, and I still think that the something more comes back to why was the Night King made, and who was the guy who made the Night King. Let me start with my theory of that I think that Bran potentially is the Night King, or that he's at least warged into the man who becomes the Night King. When you start with the prophecy of Azor Ahai and the prince that was promised and all those kind of things, why didn't they kill the Night King in the first place, right? If that's how he's supposed to die this time around, why couldn't they kill the Night King 8,000 years ago when the Night's Watch was first made? Why was their answer to build a wall and then just hide behind it, hide behind it and let him do whatever he's now done on the other side? Is it because that Azor Ahai and the prince that was promised was just more of an embellished kind of story by the soldiers? Maybe he did exist, but that just obviously it couldn't have been the answer. If it was the answer, they would have killed the Night King back then. I think that we've still got a lot more to learn about the Night King and the White Walkers before we can even come close to that answer. Right now, even though I don't think George would follow that typical storyline of the Night King's the bad guy and he's going to kind of just come on in and try and take over the world, right now that's the only thing we can go on, because they've not given us anything else. We've not seen anything apart from the one flashback where we saw how he was made. We've not seen the circumstances as to how did the children of the forest choose the man Who was the man? That's one of the biggest questions that we need to know. What powers do they have? What powers does the Night King have? We still don't know if it's Greenseer, Warg. There's obviously something else going on. Why, when they stabbed Benjen with the dragon glass, didn't it have the same effect as the Night King? You know, they were two separate people. And I think those are massive questions that we need to answer. Okay. A couple donations here from a Gabriel Galvin. So thank you for the super chats here. The first one is, why was Tyrion still when J and D were together? Okay, so we're talking about right at the end here on the boat, and he looks down. He looks down at the cabins, and Tyrion's kind of obviously staring down with a bit of a look. I still think it's because he's a bit concerned. He's a bit concerned about, he knows what's going on. He can't go in there and barge in. Jon is technically the king of the north, and Dany's his queen. He's already spoken out of term enough recently with her. He can't tell her who she kind of can't sleep with. Do you remember last time when Jorah was doing that with Dario? It didn't really go down so well. Dany's kind of she's gonna do what she wants when she wants. But I think there's still a little bit of concern there. I think he wants her to be his queen, but dial it back a little bit to when Tyrion was asking who is going to be the successor? Who is going to be the successor to the Iron Throne? Jon has just completely eliminated that question, especially if they have a child together, because that's who is going to be the successor to the throne, right? Now, I was actually kind of taken back in that episode when he did ask Daenerys who is going to be, who's going to be the successor, what's going to happen after you die, because you can't have children. I was a bit like, whoa, they don't even have the Iron Throne yet, and I get Tyrion, he seems like a legit guy in terms of his intentions, but why is he broaching this subject of who is going to succeed Daenerys? And she saw through it a little bit, she's talking like, are you talking about you? Are you going to be the one who succeeds the Iron Throne? Very hairy moment, I actually think. So I think, is that Tyrion looking down the cabin kind of thinking, well, hang on, that's part of my vision, potentially Tyrion taking over a successor or be involved in that somehow. Has Jon just kind of taken that away? I don't think it's going to be like a long-term play. I mean, look at what happened with Jorah. Jorah was obviously very jealous of Dany and the relationships that she kept, but he didn't get too much past that. I think in the end he just embraced the fact that he was in love with Dany, and now he's just one of the most trusted, loyal people that she has by her side. So yeah, that's what I think is happening in that scene between Jon and Dany. So $20 donation here, super chat. So thank you very much, Alexander Sharp. What if the Night King is a Targaryen? Does Daenerys die? What if Carolyn found out Jon was not Ned's son? Would she treat him? Okay. So here's what the question is. So question number one, what if the Night King is a Targaryen? Well, this depends on what assumption you want to go on. So the first assumption is, how old is the Night King? Okay, there's a few different theories that I have on this. Is the Night King the same Night King? Or is the Night King a title where one succeeds the other, right? That's very, very important. Or is the Night King one entity, one character who has existed from the start? Was he the one that the Children of the Forest turned? Is he the one and only original Night King? And I'm going to go with that answer only because the same actor, the same stuntman who was in that scene is the same stuntman who plays the Night King now. Okay, so you kind of have to apply a little bit of logic with that and say, okay, so he's the same guy, he's 8,000 years old. Now, 8,000 years ago, I don't think the Targaryens were even a factor in anything. Only the First Men had invaded Westeros by that point, so you have to assume that the Night King is a Northern man. And typically, I think the most popular idea is that he's a Stark. If he's not Bran Stark, he's at least related to the Starks. But the Andal invasion and the Rhoynar, that wasn't until another 4,000 years after the whole events of the Long Night with the Great Others. So for me, I don't think the Night King is a Targaryen. Also, remember that the Targaryens were actually one of the lower down families in Valyria. They weren't even one of like the highest or the richest families. They were just one of the Dragon Lord families, one of the Dragon Rider families. And it just so happens that one of their children had the vision about the doom of Valyria. So that was about 500 years before the current events, between 500 and 800 years. So is the Night King a Targaryen? No, I'm going to say that the Night King is a Stark. Next question was, does Daenerys die? I think Daenerys has to die. Before this is finished, I genuinely believe that Daenerys has to die in this show. Um, there's the massive theories about whether she's Nissa, and for people who aren't sure what that is. So basically, the legend of the prince that was promised is about a man who was tempering a sword, and he tried once, failed, tried twice, failed, and on the third time, basically he tempered the sword for longer, and in the end, he bonded it. He bonded it with his wife's soul, and he forged Lightbringer. And so he became the prince that was promised, and the Lightbringer was supposed to be the weapon that vanquished the Great Others. And this is what I go back to about the whole that prophecy and things. 8,000 years ago, if that's the prophecy that's supposed to repeat itself, then if history repeats itself, that doesn't work. It's not going to work again, right? But I think if that's the way things go, and Jon Snow's the prince that was promised, and that it is going to save the world, then Daenerys dies. That's how Daenerys dies. But Daenerys, even though Jon's the hero and Jon's the warrior, look at the way Daenerys was just willing to not sacrifice herself, but she put herself and her dragons on the line to go and save Jon and everyone. And it's going to happen one of two ways: either Jon or someone is going to kill Daenerys as a sacrifice, or Daenerys is going to kind of put everyone before her and kind of make that self-sacrifice. That's how I think she would probably die. And then the last question there from Alexander is, what if Catelyn found out that Jon was not Ned's son? Would she treat him any better? There's massive theories on this actually about whether she actually did she know. In fact, did she know? And was Catelyn actually bitter because she knew everything that Ned risked? Can you imagine if Robert Baratheon had found out that Ned had been shielding Jon as the heir to the throne, the Targaryen? Because Ned knew that his entire life. I mean, let's put this into context right now. I mean, given that final vision, the final kind of the join up of that flashback where Lyanna tells Ned, and his name is Aegon, he's the heir to the throne. At that point, and for the rest of his life, Ned knew that Jon was the rightful king to the Seven Kingdoms. This is all through, this is after Robert's rebellion, but when you look at the Greyjoy rebellion, Ned knew that Jon actually should be the one who was destined to sit on the throne. The second part to that is also whether Benjen knew, because when Jon first goes to the wall, Benjen actually says to him, when Jon's I'm ready to take the black, I'm ready to give all that up in terms of his family and making the Night's Watch vows, and Benjen turns around and says to him, well, maybe you would care if you knew what it meant. Now, out of everyone at Winterfell, Benjen, along with I think Bran and Arya, he embraced Jon despite the fact that he was a bastard. And again, is it because he knew what Jon was? And I come back to the question, which is, what if Catelyn found out? Did she already know? Hashtag, she knew, she didn't know. Right? Do you think she knew, or do you think that she just thought that Ned actually was unfaithful and had a bastard out of wedlock? I'd like to think that she knew. I'd like to think that Catelyn knew that Jon was a Targaryen, and that the reason why she was angry is because their whole lives, the whole Stark and the North, were protecting Jon. A single man, a continent, a country was protecting a single man, potentially. Alright, next super chat. Again, thank you so much, guys, here for the super chats. This is from Jules. Do you think that Jon wants the throne when he finds out, obviously, about his lineage, and what will this do to their relationship? This is a brilliant question. So basically, alright, so let me rephrase this a little bit. So basically, what do I think is going to happen between Jon and Daenerys once Jon finds out that he is actually the rightful heir to the throne? Well, look at Jon throughout history in terms of the decisions he's been made. The reason why Jon is such a great leader is because he doesn't actually crave it. He doesn't want it. He doesn't ask for it. He's just a natural born leader. He's just like the guy that everyone looks to, mainly, mainly everyone looks to for help. To kind of for a bit of leadership, for a bit of direction, because he's so sincere with what his choices are. He doesn't, choose to lead the Night's Watch. Sam is the one that puts him forward and says, no, Jon is the one that we turn to when the night was darkest. When the wildlings were attacking Castle Black. Again, when Jon goes with Tormund north of the Wall, to meet with the elders, to try and get the Free Folk on board. Tormund says, he's young, but he knows how to lead, and he needs us, and we need him. And it was so true. And I think the same thing is going to happen. I think if and when they get told, sorry, Daenerys, actually Jon is the heir to the throne, I think Jon's just going to turn around and actually say, I don't want it. I've chosen Daenerys as my queen. She can be the queen. That doesn't mean that Jon won't be able to have a hand in that. But ultimately, the other question you can actually ask is there actually even going to be an Iron Throne to rule? Is there even going to be a capital in the end? Will it survive what's about to come their way? Because I think between Jon and Dany, they've got a different objective in their mind now. They're looking north of the Wall. North of the Wall. They're looking to the north, and they're just seeing the enemy. They're not looking to the south anymore and kind of wondering who's going to sit on the throne. Now that Cersei is off their backs, all the way in their minds, she's an ally. I think that they're just looking to how can they survive and save Westeros. But when the time comes, I don't think Jon will want it. I think Daenerys might potentially say to him, well, actually, no, you're the one who's the natural born leader. But Jon's going to be the one to turn around and say, he never grew up with the expectation that one day he gets to sit on the Iron Throne. For a long time now, Daenerys has believed in her mind, the Iron Throne is mine. She's going to take it. If anyone was going to sit on it, my answer would be that it's going to be Daenerys. She's going to be the one that sits on it. So, all right, another super chat. Wow. Johannes, thank you very much. Do you think the Night King will stay behind with the Whites the entire time while they march south? Or will he attack the cities solo with Viserion? So, alright, brilliant question. So one thing that I've always wondered about is, I think it was in one of the trailers for season 6 or maybe season 7. And we saw in fact, that's it. It was in episode 10, season 6, right? And when Bran has his visions, we see the shadow of a dragon above King's Landing. And still to this day, we still haven't seen it. We still haven't seen it happen. We didn't see it just then in the episode. Daenerys kind of flew in, but it was from like an outside angle. So is that still a vision of the Night King on Viserion flying over King's Landing? Because we know from the vision, that it's going to get destroyed. We know that it's going to get destroyed, King's Landing. The question is, and here we go, and here's another hashtag coming up for you guys. How do you think that the capital falls? Hashtag the Night King and Viserion, hashtag Daenerys and Drogon, or hashtag the Iron Bank, because the rumor is that they caused the doom of Valyria. So it would be brilliant to see how do you think King's Landing will fall? Night King, the Iron Bank, or Daenerys? All right. So anyway, so we've got another. Oh wow! Thank you, Jules. We've got another super chat here. I see Jon not wanting the throne, but if the people they know might want him for the king, maybe they will hide. Maybe they will try to hide who he truly is to be loyal to Dany. Okay, so I'll rephrase this a little bit. So what Jules is asking here is it possible that now that Bran and Sam know who Jon is, will they hide his true heritage from Jon? I think the answer to that has to be no. I think No one's getting around Bran at this point. You can't lie. You can't lie to Bran. You can't try and fool Bran. You can't try and swindle him. He's got something else ticking up in his brain. He's seen something with Jon. If you remember when he first got back to Winterfell, one of the first things he said was, I think when he was at the tree talking to Sansa, was, "I need to speak to Jon." You know, whether that's just because he's seen the Night King, he's seen the dead, and he knows what they're up against, or whether it's because he knows that Jon is involved in this, or is going to be involved in this, on a bigger scale, I think that remains to be seen. But when Jon gets back to Winterfell, Bran and or Sam are going to tell Jon. There is no doubt about that. Sam is not lying to Jon, and Bran is not lying to Jon. Even if the other Northern Lords do or don't want it. I think what was great, this is just coming back to the whole Sansa thing, it was great to already see they were talking about Jon and he's already bent the knee, and obviously Sansa was saying, can't believe Jon didn't confront me about this, and this was to Littlefinger, by the way. And I think it was great to see that she was playing Littlefinger when she was saying that. So I think when Jon comes back, I think there's going to be an initial, why didn't you talk to me first? But ultimately, Jon just went south, came back north with weapons to fight with and a much bigger army to fight with. And we're talking, and still 2 dragons. You can't condemn Jon for what he went south for. He's come back and he's put the North in a stronger position. Okay, so he might have bent the knee, but if he has a relationship with Dany, I think that's going to be a lot easier to accept. Rather than he just came back and was like, okay, guys, right, so Dany's our queen now. But if they're romantically involved, it's a much easier sell, isn't it? It's a much, much easier sell. Just a quick one to Jack Cullen. You made a super chat before, but you didn't put any message with it before. So, if you want to try and get that in the chat, brother, then I'll make sure I read that out. So, all right, guys, let's talk. Let's get another one here. Stop calling him Jon. All right, his name's Aegon. All right, guys. Hashtag time. What should we refer to the King of the North as his real name? Would you still call him Jon, or are we calling him Aegon? And just a quick one here, guys. I need to quickly shout out one of my patrons. I've just seen in the chat, Muse. So good to see you here. I'm sorry I've only just seen you if you've been here for a while. Obviously this is the first live stream I've done, so it's struggling to keep up with the people, but it's great to see you here, Muse. So yeah, hashtag, guys, Aegon or Jon? What do you think that he should be called? For me, you know what? There's a pure divide here. I'm seeing a lot of Jon. I'm seeing a lot of Aegon. Personally, for me, I think it has to be Jon still, because even though his name is officially Aegon, it's like when Jon goes to call Daenerys Dany. Pete, she was kind of freaked out a little bit, but I won't say freaked out, but she was obviously very uncomfortable by it. The last person to call her Dany was a brother. The brother he was vicious, he was awful, he was nasty, and Jon's none of those things. So there's a fucking big ass moth on my computer. Anyway, for me, I've got to call him Jon. I've got to call him Jon. That's what we've known him for what, 7 years if you've been watching the TV show, 20 years if you've been reading the books. So he's still Jon to me. Alright, brilliant question here, by the way, from Ms. Bemu. Why doesn't Bran look at how the White Walkers are defeated for the first time? This is one of the biggest questions. So thank you for the question, and it's a great one. Why hasn't Bran done that? I think they're obviously saving it. I mean, look, this is the only problem. When you introduce, when you make a character and develop him into this guy who can just see everything, know everything, you kind of sat there thinking, damn, just give us a whole episode of flashbacks, and that's the story done, right? Go back to when the first men invaded Westeros. Let's look at what happened when they made the pact. What's on the Isle of the Faces? What happened with when they first put the wall up? What happened with Bran the Builder, Storm's End, everything? You can just say, give us Bran and give us a flashback. I've got to be honest with you, that's one episode I'd love to watch, just Bran giving us flashbacks, right? But it's too easy, and you can't sell it that way. I mean, The answer to that, I'm going to say, is something that Bran said. Is everything's just pieces, everything's just fragments in his mind, right? So a great example was when Sam came into the room where Bran was, and they're talking about John and about his parentage, Rhaegar, Lyanna. So Bran knew that part, but then he turned round and he was like, "Oh, but he's a sand. He's not a snow. He's a sand." And Sam actually kind of then trumps him and says, "Well, hang on a minute. No, I've read this account. Um, I've read this account of Rhaegar and Lyanna having a marriage. That Rhaegar had an annulment, and that he didn't rape and kidnap Lyanna. They were married." And Bran has this look on his face where he's kind of like, "Oh," because then Sam's like, "Oh, well, can you not do your vision thing? Can you not do your vision thing and go and see that?" And that's what he does, right? So you've got to look at this and go, "Well, hang on, how didn't Bran know that already?" He's one guy, whilst he can see everything that's going on, he can't do it all at once. It's not like, say, Johnny Five, where he can just read a book and it's like, in his head. He's actually got to watch those visions, and that's going to take time. That's one of the other problems with the old Three-Eyed Raven, is that he spent years and years and years and years, reading watching these visions, and he still wasn't any closer to figuring it all out, which is why Bran had to step in. Bran's more powerful, and I think he will get there. I think Bran will eventually be able to go back and look at how the White Walkers were defeated for the first time. Wink, wink, my Bran becomes the Night King theory about he goes back to the start and potentially gets caught up in that business. But he's got to learn how to do that, right? He's got to learn how to get to that point in time. He's still learning a lot from what the Three-Eyed Raven was teaching him. All right, a couple of super chats have come in here, guys. Another one from Jules. Wow, thank you very much. Okay, sorry. So this is just Jules correcting me before. So what Jules was saying was, when Jon finds out, will Jon or Aegon, will he hide it from the people, since he knows what it could do to Dany's claim for the throne? That's a brilliant correction there. So thank you for that, Jules. And actually, I have to agree with you there, Jules. So what Jules is saying here is, so when Jon gets back and he finds out who his parentage is, will he hide it from Dany or from the other people? Or maybe he might tell Dany, but will he hide it from everyone, or will he hide it from just Dany? I think he will. I think that's actually a good shout. I mean, if you remember when Davos and Jon first turned up at Dragonstone, and Davos went to tell Daenerys about how Jon was stabbed in the heart, I think it was a very good shout that Davos, he went to tell Daenerys, and Jon kind of looked over at him as if to say, "Don't finish that story." And I think you're right there, Jules. I think that the same kind of thing could happen again, where Jon finds this information out and thinks that it could do more harm than good. The only kind of question I've got for you, Jules, on that is, based on what we just saw in the Dragon Pit, where Jon was talking about the world being built on lies, and it's just lie after lie, and all it becomes is, how good is the next lie? He wants to offer that honesty. You just have to kind of consider that, right? Will Jon find out the information and want to hide it, but feel compelled to share it? I think my best bet when that scene, and if that scene comes about, is that Jon finds out, Jon's told. I think he'll tell Daenerys, and I think he will kind of not force Daenerys. He can't obviously force Daenerys to do anything, but I think he will really home in on telling Daenerys to not share that with everyone else, because he doesn't want to. I don't think Jon wants to be king. He does not want to be king. He barely wants to be king in the north. He's just taking advantage of the position that he knows, that he can kind of utilize to best protect the lands that he loves. We've got another super chat here. So this is from Gareth Cole. So thank you very much. Is Jaime Azor Ahai, and why did the mountain not kill him? So first one, is Jaime Azor Ahai? I'm gonna say no. I think based on the information in the books, with Rhaegar's prophecy, the vision of Rhaegar and the unnamed woman, who I think is Lyanna Stark, I think we're starting to see pieces of evidence kind of being put in place where they're basically telling us that John slash Aegon is the prince that was promised. Let me recite that passage for you. So Rhaegar is with another woman, right? And she says, "What's his name? His name is Aegon. What better name for a king? Will you make a song for him? He has a song. His song is Ice and Fire, and he is the prince that was promised." Something like that. Maybe not in that exact order, but it's something like that. Now, based on the fact that we've just found out that Jon's name is Aegon, if you assume that the woman in that vision is Lyanna Stark, then the person they're talking about is Jon slash our Aegon. Aegon the sixth, Aegon the seventh, if you include Rhaegar's other son. Although it only counts, I think, if you actually are crowned, right? So I think Jon is officially Aegon the sixth. And so, so based on that, I think that Jon has to be Azor Ahai if Azor Ahai is real. I know there's a lot of evidence that does point towards Jaime, and you've got the same with Jorah Mormont as well. Even there's some that points at Hot Pie, which is obviously a bit the more jokey theory. But I think, look, let's be honest, Jaime is probably more of a prime candidate to be the Valonqar. I don't think he's going to be both. I don't think he's going to be the Valonqar and Azor Ahai. But he has come on an amazing story arc. I mean, the Jaime that we see in the recent episodes, or in fact in the last 3 or 4 seasons, if you go back and watch season 1 tomorrow, Jaime is the most changed character, or at least one of the most changed characters from the entire show. So yeah, another super chat from Jules. Seriously, thank you, Jules, so much. So Jules said, "That's true, but at the same time, Ned Stark was a nobleman and lied his entire life about Jon's true identity." Very good point. "I think sometimes the Starks might think lying is okay if it protects the ones they love." So this is great. So obviously we're talking here about whether Jon is going to potentially hide the fact that he is officially Aegon Targaryen, heir to the throne of the Seven Kingdoms and the Iron Throne. Hashtag, guys, will Jon be honest, or will Jon conceal the truth? What do you guys think? Tell the truth or keep the lie, hide the lie? Because it's actually quite a difficult one to call, because, very good point here, I'm one of the people that truly believe that Jon is almost molded in Ned's footsteps. Robb was obviously a bit like his father Ned, but Jon, even though he's not Ned's son, really kind of took on a lot of the characteristics of Ned. So the question is, given that Ned, probably held the biggest lie ever in the Seven Kingdoms, would Jon potentially follow suit and hide another big secret from the North? Yes or no? I want to know. I want to see what you guys think about that. Another super chat here. This is from Alexander Sharp. Thank you very much for this. Will Jaime tell Jon and Daenerys? Sorry, I'm going to repeat that. Will Jaime tell Jon and Daenerys Cersei's true plans? Will Tormund get wed to Brienne, or will he die? So first question. I think Jaime will tell Tyrion. I think, look, it's not going to take a genius to figure this one out. You're Tyrion. Jaime shows up on your doorstep, or you, Jon, and Jaime, turns up on your doorstep. Jaime said that he made the vow, the promise, that he was going to fight with the North against the real enemy, the true enemy, and that was kind of like one of his parting words as he left Cersei. He's like, "No, I'm going to go and do this. We said we're going to do this. I'm going to go and do this." So when he comes knocking on the doorstep with a fraction of the forces that he had, all you've got to look at there is say, so what happened? He might try and cover up the truth, but I think when him and Tyrion meet, there's no denying that he's going to tell Tyrion what happened. He's going to tell Tyrion that, look, Cersei's not going to be there for us. And I think that's where the story is going to split potentially into 2 different plots. You're going to have the North and Daenerys tackling the true enemy, and obviously we're going to see certain things happen with that. And then in the south now, you've got this business between Euron and Cersei. And let's put it this way: if they go, okay, if people, sorry, let's start up again. If Cersei gets the Golden Company to come over, and they don't need the Golden Company, you got to remember they have to pay this army on an ongoing basis, right? So they get the Golden Company. She's got Euron, but she's got no one to fight, right? Because the North and Daenerys and Jon, they're gonna be busy fighting the Night King. So what's the purpose of this sellsword army? And will the Iron Bank cut this off? Or, like I said, I go back to my early question of, did the Iron Bank give Cersei permission to go and get the Golden Company, or is Cersei just acting on impulse and spending this money? I think that's going to unravel a whole separate plot line. Yes, have we got time to do this? Well, we do. We have to. I mean, the fact is Cersei is not joining in the fight. In the vision of the House of the Undying, the capital is in ruin. So will the Night King just fly over there and destroy it? I feel like that's a bit cheap. Or will we see a bit more of a plot with the Iron Bank? Because the Iron Bank, by the way, they're back in season 8. So are they going to just play another bit role? I'd like to think not. I'd like to think that if the Iron Bank were responsible for the doom of Valyria, are they going to be responsible for the doom of the capital? The line that I love that Taicho said was, when Cersei was trying to defend what she did with the Sept, she said, look, sometimes tragedies happen, and Taicho responds by saying, yeah, that's right. Sometimes unfortunate tragedies are necessary to reorder establishment. I think that was almost quote for quote. And he did it with a smile on his face. And when I watched him do that, what I read from that was, oh, is that a throw to the doom of Valyria? Is that like the first real acknowledgement that in order to reorder the establishment, in terms of, at that point the Valyrians were just dominating Essos, by causing the doom of Valyria, you opened up all these different pockets of the Valyrian freehold that became their own free cities, which is obviously what they're known as today. So you could see that was maybe a good thing or a bad thing, but in the eyes of the Iron Bank, they believe that these tragedies are necessary, that's how I think. That's the route that I think the King's Landing is going down. Second question from Alexander: will Tormund get to wed Brienne or die? Now look, guys, I want to see who's with me on this. If you think that Tormund is going to die, would you riot? Right? And the hashtag I want now is hashtag if Tormund dies, we riot. I want to see how many people would be willing to riot if Tormund died, because I would be there charging the way for sure. If Tormund dies, I'm not going to be happy. I think he's probably in my list of 3 or 4 characters that I don't think I'd be able to process watching them die. Like when he nearly died at the Battle of the Bastards, and then again north of the Wall. Oh my goodness! Like I couldn't handle it. I really, and seeing what just happened then, I have to believe that Tormund is a little bit like Jon. Like when Sam says, he always comes back. He always comes back, and I have to pray that the same thing happens for Tormund. Pray for Tormund, guys. Pray for Tormund. I hope he gets out alive. And as for whether he wed Brienne, I don't think that'll ever happen. I don't think it's ever going to go down. But it would be awesome. I've already seen some of the awesome memes of Brienne and Tormund's offspring, these great big beasts. Oh, okay. So I've got another super chat here, guys, from Ali Khan. So thank you very much for the $5. Do you think Jon Connington and Aegon Targaryen are at the Golden Company? So, alright, I'm going to go off a little bit here just for the people who haven't read the books. So one of the biggest plot lines in the books that we haven't even remotely heard of yet in the TV show is in the books, in Essos, where the Golden Company are. Jon Connington was one of Rhaegar Targaryen's closest friends, and I think he was the Hand of the King at one point. And the other Aegon Targaryen, as in Rhaegar's first son. In the books, we're actually led to believe that he was swapped out at childbirth by Varys. Um, and the idea is now is he's kind of rising to power, and he's using the Golden Company to come and take the Iron Throne. Now, obviously, with the show now talking about the Golden Company, one of the bigger questions being asked is that does that mean we're going to see John Connington with the imposter or the legitimate Aegon Targaryen coming to take the Iron Throne, and is that going to be one of the plot lines that develops? I'm going to say, because we've not seen anything from John Connington, I think that it turns out that Aegon is an imposter in the books, and therefore in the TV show, his entire storyline is completely unnecessary. So that was like one of the storylines that you can get away with just completely removing. They didn't need to put any time on that, and also Varys has involvement in that whole John Connington storyline too. So for me, Ali, I'm going to say no. I don't think that we will see John Connington. I think in the books it'll turn out that the other Aegon is an imposter. Um, Super chat here from Panama Lane, $10. Thank you so much. Do you think it is possible that Tyrion was upset watching Jon and Dany because his desire to break the wheel and form a new kind of government, but is watching the same feudal system playing out instead? So what Panama's saying here is with Jon and Dany getting together and potentially having a child, which I think they will, go on to have. Are we saying here that the whole breaking the wheel metaphor is actually in jeopardy because obviously Dany and Jon are potentially about to produce an heir to the throne, which is it's following the whole line of, and it's, so I always think it's amazing when you actually read real history about this, that if you are the son of a king or a queen, that automatically you get to be the next person to run the country. And that's obviously, even in today's world, that's one of the things that was wrong with the world. And it doesn't really happen anymore, in mainstream countries, certainly in the West. But a few hundred years ago it did. A few hundred years ago, the king's son, the guy that, would rape chambermaids and do what he wanted, that when his father passed away, that by law, we decided that he was the next best guy to run the country, and that's a messed up system, and that's what is wrong with Westeros. So the question is it in jeopardy? And is that why Tyrion is worried when he's looking down the cabin? I actually think, Panama, that is a fantastic answer. I'm going to say that I do think that is why he's looking down there, because he's looking down here and realizing that he was hoping for a vision of like the way the Night's Watch work, the way they elect, a new leader. They elect the next best person that everyone agrees on. This is the best person to run the Night's Watch, to be the new Lord Commander. Essentially, that's going to disappear. Not 100%, but it is highly likely, isn't it? But I still come back to this fact of, is there even going to be a capital to rule in the end? Hashtag, guys, do you think there's going to be a capital to rule in the end? No capital. That's my hashtag. I don't think there's going to be a capital to run in the end. Another super chat from Jules here, the $2. Oh my God, Jon could be Dany's third betrayal. How do you think Jon could or would betray Daenerys? I don't see that. Not at this stage anyway. I think there's a long way to go. Personally, for Jon to be, to betray Daenerys. I think at the end of the day, they've got the armies. They're looking to fight. They're looking to fight the Night King together. When it comes to saying that there's not enough time in the story for that to happen, that's what I would apply that to. I don't think there's enough time to kind of develop a betrayal position or situation from Jon. I think that if Daenerys gets pregnant, and after Jon finds out that she's his aunt, I think that is going to cause a lot of friction. I think that's going to cause a lot of problems, and I think that's something that they're going to have to work out. But I think that's as far as it goes. So, alright guys, so we're coming close to the hour and a half mark. So I'm going to go for 6 more minutes. So if you've got any questions, make sure you fire them out now. Because I'm gonna go for 6 more minutes, and then we'll close the live stream just for today. But I am gonna be doing a lot more live streams. Very quick in the chat, guys. Obviously, this is my first ever live stream. If you would like to see more live streams like this one, because you know what I'm like, I'm always looking to theorize. Hashtag more live streams, or hashtag I'm afraid there's one, no more live streams. I'd like to do more live streams personally, but we'll see. All right, so next question anyway. So from Raphael, did the Night King expect the showing up of the dragon? So this is something I talked about in the last video that I've just done, where I believe that the Night King lured Jon and Dany north of the Wall. I think that his plan was an anticipation that a dragon would come north of the Wall, especially if that is the only way that he was able to get past the Wall. Because otherwise, why did he bring the spears? There's so many questions here. Why did he bring the spears? Why didn't he kill Jon or any of the others when they were sleeping? If he had another way of getting past the Wall, why wouldn't he have just done it maybe 10, 20 years ago when Jon was just a little baby still in his nappies? When he couldn't have risen up to become Azor High. For me, the Night King intentionally lured them, and he baited them to get the dragon there. In Bran's vision, this is episode 6, in the first opening, maybe 20-30 minutes. When Bran first sees the Night King past Eastwatch, where he's stood with his 4 horsemen, it honestly looks like the exact same location that Jon and the guys get stuck on. And I think that was kind of like, that was the start of the bait. That was the start of the setup. So yeah. All right, we've got time for a couple more questions. All right, let's see what we got. Okay. So we've got one here from BK. Do you think that a possible ending could be that the White Walkers take over all of Westeros and the surviving humans have to flee over to Essos, so ice and fire are in balance? Well, I think that's a very possible way. I mean, I'll be honest with you. So one of the questions I probably get asked the most is, how do you think it's going to end? How do you think the show's going to end? Now, I have my very, very specific, detailed how I think it's going to pan out, which I'm not going to go over because we could be here for another 2 hours talking about that. And then I have my generalized way, how do I think it's going to end? And I think that when you look at all the various parts of Game of Thrones, you can see all the different places where George has taken inspiration from Tolkien, right? He's come out in interviews and admitted this many, many times. But I think when you look at like the Bard situation in terms of how he shoots the dragon down, Bard in The Hobbit, and then how you have Bronn trying to shoot down a dragon, very, very similar. The way you have the Knights of the Vale riding in on horses, similar to when the Knights of the Rohirrim come and save Helm's Deep right at the end of the Two Towers. But more importantly, look at how the whole Lord of the Rings ends, right? So you have Frodo and Sam, and I guess the end, and Frodo saying goodbye. And in particular, when Frodo breaks the news that he's leaving Middle Earth, and everyone's, it's all sad, a very emotional moment. I think I even cried, the first time I watched it. And Frodo says this very specific words: "We saved the Shire. We set out what we meant to do. We saved the Shire, but it isn't saved for me." So he leaves Middle Earth, right? Now, what George has tended to do is amplify these areas of inspiration into his own story. So how do you amplify that kind of ending? So they set out what they mean to do, which is to save Westeros, and they do it. Maybe they managed to find a way to vanquish the great others, but in doing so, they don't save Westeros. So they end the threat, but Westeros is lost. Westeros becomes a casualty, And just like BK said there in his question, maybe anyone that survives can't even live in Westeros anymore. Maybe it was just that war torn and ravished by the battles that they have to leave. They have to leave and go over to Essos. And it kind of, that would be another example of the full circle of the story. So 8,000 years ago, only the children of the forest inhabited Westeros. Oh, and the giants, sorry, and the giants did. Can you imagine that amazing story arc that 8,000 years go by, and the first men and the Andals and everyone that invaded the continent are forced to leave, and they do so. They have to leave back to Essos. Essos being where they originally came from. And if there are any more surviving children of the forest, will they get to stay? If it's on the Isle of the Faces, will the children of the forest stay and live out their days? So for me, that's how I think it's going to end, or a more generalized way that I think it's going to end. So yeah. All right, so we've just come. All right, two more questions. I'm being asked here to do two more questions. So get your questions in now because I've got the next question that I'm gonna do. So obviously, like I said, get your questions in ASAP. Second to last question. Okay, so this one's been asked already. So do you think the baby in Daenerys' season 2 vision was Jon and her child? I've talked about that a bit before, but yes, I do think that the baby in the vision is Jon and Daenerys' child. The actual question is from Chandler Smith, and this is the one I wanted to read out. Do you think there could be 3 Azor Ahais, aka being the 3 heads of the dragon? I'm gonna say no, personally. My personal choice. I mean, don't get me wrong. What you have to look at here is that there is a lot of evidence that suggests that multiple people are Azor Ahai. But if in the end you've got all these guys running around being the prince that was promised, multiple legends Azor Ahais with multiple Lightbringers, I think it kind of, the integrity of the show and the poeticness of the show becomes lost a little bit. Because what you've got to remember is the whole 3 heads of the dragon thing is a Targaryen motto. That's their house sigil, their family emblem, and the Targaryens weren't there at the start of Westeros. It was the first men. The first men were the people that invaded back then, and it was the first men that had to tackle that initial fight against the White Walkers. So you have to assume that House Targaryen, and thus the motto of the 3 heads of the dragon, didn't even exist at that point. So I'm just going to go with the one Azor Ahai. And I think that, like I said, at this point, my theory is coming very soon, but I think that Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, is got to be the one. If there is an Azor Ahai, if there is a prince that was promised by proof, by some kind of law or some sort of evidence, it has to be Jon. I think it'd be pretty poor writing at this point if it just turned out to be several people. Alright, so we're coming in here for the final question. Let's pick one right out of the hat. I tell you what, it's not so much of a question, but it's more of a request, and it's from Eddie Yamato. Please talk about Jaime's fate. So I'm going to make this a bit of a brief one. But Jaime's fate, I think a lot of people honestly think that he's going to become Azor Ahai, and there's evidence to suggest that he will become Azor Ahai. But deep down, I think Jaime is a bit more humble than that. I think we've seen him go on this amazing story arc. He was this arrogant, selfish, almost quite a horrible man, really. When we first met him, he was the guy that just pushed a child out of a window, when to protect his incestuous relationship with his sister. I have a question for you all now. If the Jaime that is here now, that we know now, was in that situation again, with Bran in the tower in the very first episode, questioning, it's the final hashtag of the night, would the Jaime of season 7 push Bran out the window? Hashtag yes or no. Would Jaime of season 7 push Bran out the window? Ultimately, though, I think Jamie. I think he's got to be one of the guys that lives. I think for me, I've come to really actually to love his character, um, and I think it's going to be amazing seeing him and John potentially together, because when I think the only dialogue we've seen Jamie and John exchange properly was when John was training outside of when they were having the feast, and Jamie Kane it kind of came in and mocked him about the whole Night's Watch, and send our regards to the Night's Watch, protectors of the realm, and he was so condescending, wasn't he, with it all? But now I think that was them coming to King's Landing with the White was kind of like the final slap in the face for Jamie. He was faced with what he mocked in the very first episode. And what he mocked in the very first episode was kind of like, no, this is real, And I think it was great seeing him kind of stand his ground against Cersei for the first time properly. He basically just said, no, you know, I made a promise to the North. I'm going to defend the North. I just hope Jamie doesn't lose his life defending the North. So, yeah. All right, guys. So, look, I'm going to cut it short. I'm not going to cut it short. I've been going for an hour and a half. So for my first stream, I just want to thank everyone for stopping by. I'm going to do this more often. I've actually really, really enjoyed myself. There's been some amazing questions. I'm going to archive the stream. Don't you worry, guys. I will make sure that I put this up. It'll be up very, very soon. And I think when do you guys want the next live stream? Because honestly, I've really enjoyed it. You guys have had some amazing questions. Obviously, I'm going to be pouring over the episode. I've got a lot of questions and theories that I've already just got swimming in my head. How about, so check this, if people have only just come to the live stream just now, it's technically Monday where I am now. How about I do another live stream tomorrow? Tomorrow being Tuesday, by the way, in the UK. If everyone's good with that and everyone wants it again, I will live stream tomorrow, Tuesday. I will keep it about the same time. Before I go, I've got to give a massive shout out to the moderators. So the first one, Muse, she's one of the patrons to the channel. She is so amazing. She's always helping out. She's always in the comments section of the videos, and she's been a supporter of the channel. Like I said, a patron. So thank you to but the best one I've got to say is my best friend in real life, Double Barrel Riot. So if anyone here, by the way, likes to likes gaming channels, he's recently just made a channel, Double Barrel Riot. I'm going to link his channel. He's one of the moderators. He's been keeping company with you guys tonight as well. So I've got to put a big thank you to him. And like I said, honestly, guys, if you're here right now, I would love it if you could go and check out his channel. As he's always been here. He's always been supportive of the channel. So I'm gonna just drop his link here in the channel in the chat. And with that, guys, so look, I'll be back tomorrow. I promise you that. I will be back on Tuesday. I think I'll make it around about midnight. No, midnight's maybe too late. We'll start at 10 o'clock. We'll start at 10 p.m. We'll start at 10 p.m. UK time, which is going to be around about 5 p.m. in the US. But the live stream I do on Tuesday is going to be a lot longer. I think I'll at least live stream for maybe 3 hours, because I'm going to have a lot to talk about when it comes to then. Honestly, thank you everyone. If there are any other patrons in the channel, in the chat, hang around till the end, because I'd like to mod some of you guys. Obviously, if there's anyone who knows me on Twitter properly and we've been talking, then again, hang around, because I would like a few more moderators for the channel. So until tomorrow, guys, and here it comes. 7 blessings to you all, and take it easy. Good night.